Hi everyone, great to be here. Thank you actually for first of all making the time just before the lunch. So again, I know it takes a lot, and finding a way to this actual hall. It took me a bit to actually find it, so it's great that you're all here. Today what we'll talk about is the state of mobile gaming in 2023. Now, what we're gonna look at is quite a lot if the clicker will work, and does. We're gonna look quite extensively into the different ad networks, as well as how they performed on both iOS and Android, as well as to move into the most recent trend that we see right now in AppsFlyer, which is cross-platform. My name is Mateusz. What we do in AppsFlyer is basically making sure that, I'm still learning the clicker. Give me a second. Should be working. Keyboard works. Okay, perfect. So for those who don't know AppsFlyer, we are the measurement provider for the mobile gaming, but not only. I think what we really are proud about is that working with such a big size of the market, we're being trusted by multiple mobile gaming studios. You can use more than 7,000 integrated partners, be it the ad networks or the actual engagement platforms, to grow not only your game, but also to retain and sustain the users. So what we actually gonna talk about today is the state of user acquisition in the last year. As you might know, it's been a turbulent years for the mobile gaming industry. Probably you saw that for the last couple of announcements in the news, unfortunate ones around the layoffs, as well as the M&As that are happening in the industry. And in the end, it all originated from how valuable users you can get into your game and how well you can actually monetize those products. So what we'll be looking at is the sample size of the top ad-funded hyper-casual games. And here you can see as well on what subcategories we divided it, as well as the top in-app purchases casual games, which include such things as match-3, simulation, puzzle, tycoon crafting, or tabletop. Then for the hyper-casuals, it will be runner, action, shooter, arcade, and different type of platformers. Again, a little bit of a glossary before we jump in. For most of you, it might be very obvious, but for those who potentially don't, we'll be talking about 3 different categories of media sources. So we need the media sources. It could be either the ad networks, which is the Iron Source, Unity, Ablovin, and many others. SRN, what this acronym means is the self-reporting networks, plus the social, obviously the duopoly for the last couple of years, which is Facebook and Google. But we also have a very strong entrance in this space, just to mention, for example, TikTok. Apple Search Ads, obviously, which benefited a lot from the recent changes on iOS, as well as demand-side platforms, which could be a Liftoff, Moloko, and also many others. As mentioned, here are the most prominent ones that most of our clients are utilizing when it comes to actually growing their games. But as mentioned, with AppsFlyer, you can also test and use the smaller networks, smaller partners that are relevant for maybe a smaller audience that you also try to acquire and reach. Okay, let's move into the iOS. I think iOS has been a very turbulent, well, now almost more than 2 years. So basically from May 2021, when Apple announced, okay, we're gonna introduce the ATT framework, which will divide the users onto consented base and not consented base. Depending on if the user consented or not, there's only a certain number of data as well as time that you can get from those users to actually optimize your campaigns. And the question that was prevalent in the industry, what will be the opt-in rates, right? So basically, what percentage of my users I will see the full lifetime value cycle of, and for which ones I should use the different attribution methods. And then, obviously, what we heard literally from everyone, everywhere, ATT will really impact our market bad and will take a huge hit. Now, after more than actually 15 months of gathering the data, we can answer this question if that was the fact. And short answer, no, it wasn't the ATT. So we actually got the wrong suspect, and we almost really put him in jail for that. What happened was something quite different. And I want to just basically pause for a second on this slide, because it really shows quite interesting trend, which maybe wasn't obvious when we started looking at the ATT. Okay, color coding. We're looking at the 3 different colors, and bear with me. What we see basically is, let's start with the blue line. So that's the pre-ATT, okay? Non-organic installs on iOS worldwide. Starting from May, okay? So let's take it May 2020. That goes all the way here, pre-ATT, to April 2021. Then the next line we'll see is the post-ATT, so the green one, and then the last one is purple one, so the last 12 months. So surprisingly, what we see, and January, that's the time of the new year, as you know, in the gaming, Q4 is well, historically always a very strong seasonality. So what we saw looking at the pre-ATT times, actually once the ATT was introduced, the installs increased overall when looking at the non-organic installs on iOS. However, looking at actually the last 12 months, or last year, installs completely decreased, even with a very weak seasonality. And basically, what we can gather from it is that actually it wasn't the introduction of the new measurement frameworks, but and the fact that actually affected all of us also outside of gaming. Potentially inflation and the cost of living, that actually we can also make an argument, actually I think it's a very interesting discussion, if gaming is a luxury good, like spending on gaming, is it well, I think we can all agree that maybe it's not the first thing that you think of when you look at the necessity list, but that was definitely impacted when you look at the slide, at the overall trend. Again, post-ATT, 14% year-over-year increase in the installs, and that's only about installs. I know we can make a case for the revenue and the post-install funnels, but the last 12 months, almost a third of the installs were wiped out of the market, mainly due to inflation and cost of living. But then you can ask me, like, okay, Mati, really cool, but how come it happened? I mean, I saw my campaigns on Facebook and Google, and they're all dropping, and it doesn't seem right. And it would be right, because, in fact, actually, Facebook, Google, and the likes dropped quite drastically. What happened, really what was I would say, the biggest winner of this change were the ad networks. Not even the DSPs, but actually the ad networks. And funny enough, there are 2 important dates, because there's ATT announce and ATT release. So basically a distinction between telling people what I will do and actually doing it. And that's exactly what iOS did. Said, hey, Apple did. Hey, on iOS there will be a scan framework, and we're gonna limit the number of data that you can get. As you can see, it already kicked off a trend to actually moving the budget somewhere else. So to ad networks, which are supporting, let's say, other types of attribution, let's just say probabilistic modeling, which is, for example, allowed still for now. And that was very interesting, because I was expecting back then that actually everyone will be overspending on iOS, because, well, I mean, that's the last month when we can use it, so let's acquire those users, where we can see the full fledge of data. Quite something different happened. So ad networks, when you look at the median share for the media source, definitely were the winners on until up to the ATT release, and this trend definitely stayed longer over time. When you look at the Facebooks, Googles of the world, what's happening? It dropped drastically when you look at the overall numbers, and they keep in this way. DSPs, actually quite the contrary. Around May, we see that it was almost even higher than the SRN and social. However, recently they also dropped a tiny bit lower, which I think is quite relevant. I would say two main reasons for that is, once, of course, I mentioned different measurement and attribution options that you can have. Second of all, what happened with the SRNs is that a lot of companies had a very sophisticated models when it comes to actually acquiring their users. So I mentioned suppression lists, how to actually create the in-house predicted lifetime value modeling. And that was all based on the SRNs. Now, without this data, and I'm going to talk a bit about it a bit more later on, when Facebook closed off basically the device level click-through attribution for those models were basically useless at this point. And that's exactly why the ad networks grew quite a bit. Okay. Here again, this is just for your comparison, and maybe some people are interested in different genres. Basically, we saw it everywhere, even in the hyper-casuals. So this was something that definitely hit us when we looked at the recession cost of living proof, which I think is quite interesting because it goes in line with the wider entertainment industry, as we can see with, I don't know, going to the movies, theaters. So gaming also falls within the entertainment business. And recession usually takes quite a bit of money out of this vertical, and that's what we definitely see with the games as well. Okay, so, but actually we posed the question in the beginning, what were the ATT opt-in rates? They were actually not so bad on the device level, so basically on the client side. They looked really not so bad. That's from the November last year, just looking at the 1 month for the opt-in rate, so just during the Q4 seasonality peak. And obviously, there are just a couple of different genres that you might think of. If you'll be interested into getting more data, highly recommend to either scan the QR code or just go to appsflyer.com/benchmarks, where you can find it for your relevant game studio and also non-gaming verticals. Now, full disclosure, those ATT rates are the ones on the device, right? So what you see in your app, when you open the iOS app and you get the ATT opt-in rate. Obviously, for IDFA to be passed on, that needs to be a dual consent. So also on the platform side. So it could be on the ad network side. Only then the IDFA is being passed on. Other than that, we need to fall back into different attribution methods like scan or probabilistic. Okay, then supposedly the whole different story on Android casual casual and hyper casual. What we heard, so once the iOS came in, the Android UA managers and campaign managers took it very easy, saying like, okay, this is not a problem. It's actually gonna be maybe even better for us because we'll move quite a lot of budgets to Android. And that's exactly what we heard. I'm also partly to blame because I was saying the same thing, that we'll see a lot of budgets being shifted to Android. Now let's see if it actually really happened. So again, it didn't. So, sorry to be bearing bad news for both of the platforms. But the fact is, again, same thing. If we look at November 2020 to October 2021, we have the ATT release in May. Then we have basically the 2021 to 2022 line, as well as the last 6 months here. So what we can gather out of this data? First of all, I would call it the COVID year. So the COVID year, first of all, we have to remember that we were all locked in at homes. A lot of new players that came in, a lot of new device IDs on the ad networks that we didn't see before, which means one thing, people who never played games start playing games because there was not so much other things to do. However, November 2021, Meta got really angry at Apple, saying, okay, if you restrict the iOS, we're going to restrict everything because we're going to go into this direction. So in 2021, specifically in October, Facebook restricted the device level click-through view, which only were sent. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Which were only sent out to MMPs, but not advertiser. it really did mess up with the UA models, with the basically and the campaigns performance that you could see on Facebook. We can discuss if that was a good right move or bad move from Meta end. The fact is, for Android, it did not really play a big role. The whole iOS and scan introduction, and then last 6 months, unfortunately, when you look at the non-organic installs, we saw a gradual decline, basically 1 quarter year-over-year decline in the non-organic installs rate as well. Now, when I tried to dig deeper into why did it happen, because I was sure that actually we're going to move the budgets, it seemed that the user behaviors on Android and iOS are completely different when it comes to the monetization. And basically, the companies that already were spending on Android, they were, well, anyways, reaching the right limit to still be profitable. And the ones that were focusing on iOS couldn't really change it one-to-one, basically copy-pasted into the Android world. So in short, the iOS didn't really have an effect, the iOS restrictions didn't have an effect on Android. Again, same thing. When you look at the Android for the what happened with the recession, less heavy than on iOS is also worth saying, but it did have a negative impact when we look at the non-organic installs and the global benchmarks. And that's also something that we were asked by our clients. Okay, so what we can do with Meta restricting data? There's a lot of talk about this. I think the buzzword of 2023, data clean room. What does it exactly mean? It's basically putting in insights from different partners without compromising on the user level privacy. Okay, so you're getting all this data in the secure, safe space, and getting the insights that you would get normally from the user level data without the identifiers. So being compliant with the GDPR rules and a different type of regulations that are coming into the market. Just how you can think about it. So, for example, if you want to cross-reference the data between certain partners, you can have the input data. We have a common identifier that is anonymized. Let's say, for example, AppsFlyer ID. So AppsFlyer will bring in the media source, campaign ID, all the information that you normally use to run campaigns. And they are the advertisers' data from engagement platforms, from prediction partner. You can then see the joint raw data, but again, without the specific user being identified and getting the aggregated insights in the data clean room, and the data would not leave the specific environment. So that's the most important part when it comes to not sharing it with the third-party vendors. Okay, so moving into the retention, because that's also something extremely important. And I think what I saw, especially in the times when it's getting crazy hard to acquire valuable new users, we might say that actually your existing player is your most important player, because in many cases he or she knows the game, and basically you don't need to try to break through this highly competitive environment like Play Store and App Store are, fully saturated and with additional limitations on the UA. Now, I know it's not the way that industry were thinking about it in the past, because UA was just sometimes cheaper to even make. It was easier to measure because, in the retention remarketing, we have whole issue of incrementality, which basically is a one simple question. Would this user come back anyways, or just came back because he or she saw a certain ad placement? Tough question to answer. So, but I think in the current world, what we see, retention has been extremely important. So again, quickly running you through the retention rates. I know it's still a crazy important metric when you test a new games, when you try to do the soft launch, see basically what is the retention that we're trying to achieve. So again, different days over the retention. I won't delve super deep into that. But we can definitely see that, for example, for hyper casual, that's from the Q1 this year, so basically January to March. Definitely iOS bears a higher retention than Android. For casuals, this retention is tiny bit lower. However, again, also the differences between Android and iOS are not that significant. Moving on into the mid-core. So again, usually something that requires a bit more gameplay, sometimes a bit more meta, that to actually get into the gist of the game. Here, obviously, the day one retention is lower, but then it's all about keeping the user longer engaged in the lifetime value. But what we saw years over years, that the retention from 2018 to retention now, overall, the numbers didn't change. They're more or less the user behaviors stay the same in the games in the different genres, okay? There might be like 4 or 5 percentage points differences, but they cannot stay the same. So what we did, and it really blew our mind, is looking at the retention of just returning users and paying users. And here, just for you to see that, when you look at the, let's say, casual retention rate for all users, yeah? If we look at the actual paying users, this is ridiculous. So paying user is basically, here we can think of day 0 as the first payment made, first in a purchase, and to day 30, so basically the time that comes from the recurring purchases. That's actually a very interesting metric. I'm not sure, we only started looking at it quite recently. So highly recommend also looking maybe within your data or your users, what's the retention there? Because except for obviously, I mean, the obvious reason is that there's already a certain cost. If I start making purchases in a game, I want to make use of it, right? I mean, I already spent some money. I'm actually feeling more engaged with the game. But the numbers, and that's across the board, right? That's the top casual games in the US. So very, I would say very strong benchmarks, shows really, really, really strong results, which again makes us think about how we approach the monetization, retention, and actually converting the user to a paying user inside the game. Same thing for mid-core. Compared to the normal retentions, really, really, really strong retention. Actually, we even thought there's a mistake in the data. We had to run through it again. It's correct. Okay, so very briefly on the retention strategies, which I think, again, well, cross-promo and cross-lifetime value across your portfolio. If many of you wonder why there are so many merger and acquisitions on the market, why bigger studios acquire smaller studios, why studios are being acquired by governments, like Savvy Games, so basically a Saudi-sponsored studio acquired Scopely. It is because it is getting harder in the UA world to actually acquire the right users if you don't test ad networks, DSPs, and different options. And cross-promo is definitely something that we are seeing taking more and more space in our discussions with our clients. Deep linking in your marketing, keeping the user engaged, trying to make sure that he or she will actually become a paying user. Very important point here. And then leveraging all your own media channels. Why? Because it's free, and you can see the full visibility of the data once you acquire them through newsletter, push notifications. I know is not what gaming has been doing traditionally, but also the new rules of the game require us to basically think about different options here as well. I know that some of you have also being actually present in this room did amazing work with the YouTube influencers, with actually producing a certain type of content that can really gather this attention, and I think that's actually the right path to think about moving forward, because just the simple creatives and opening the budgets on the big networks simply don't work anymore. Okay, so to the last point, which actually I think is extremely relevant to the audience here, to the whole Digital Dragons conference, is that something that we did not think AppsFlyer will be moving into, but PC and console measurement. I think what I would like to say, and I want to show you this graph. One of my favorite graphs in the industry. This is basically shows the rise of gaming revenue from the very start, from 1972. The Space Invaders come in, Pac-Man, Mario, and then you have a breakdown between console, so arcade, so not sure if everyone still remember those, but arcade, consoles, PC, handheld, that was also a big trend at one point, and then basically from around 1997, there was still a game like Snake on Nokia. Quite important thing when Steve Jobs thought, okay, let's open the App Store market, and you see what happened with mobile. It's absolutely huge. Cloud and VR, still probably up and coming. But I really especially love this one because it shows in how many different ways we as the players interact with the games. And it also shows from the business perspective that half of mobile revenue consists of the full total gaming revenue, but half of it consists of PC and console. And very often now when you think about studios is that they're leaving one part of it on the table. We're either focusing on this specific one for many good reasons, and then the same goes for mobile. And I had this conversation actually yesterday. I was visiting my family here in Krakow, and I have basically my cousin, he's 7 years old, and he told me something that actually was perfect before this presentation, because he asked me why I can't play that I show him on the on my mobile phone. Why I can't just put it on the PC? Sorry, on the TV. And I was like, well, but because it's a mobile game. It's like, but why? You know? And then I was like, what do you mean? He's like, no, but I can do this thing. Like there's no distinction of the devices for this generation that is now becoming a players. Yeah, I don't want to even say a mobile player or a PC player. I think there are, of course, examples, but for now it's just a couple of examples, like I know Fortnite, right? Amazing thing of kind of tapping into whole audiences, but it really also made me realize that how the new generation of players think about games completely changed. And I think basically when we look at this data as well in AppsFlyer, the data proves it. So when you look at the gaming revenue, it is coming from really different multiple platforms, right? Obviously, mobile is still king. And again, it's most accessible when we think about APAC, when we think about Africa, and we think about Latin America. There's a huge, countries like Brazil, Vietnam, which are beloved by UA managers because there's a good retention. It's still pretty cheap, but console PC, this is growing, and I think not sure if this deal gonna go through. Activision bid basically by Microsoft. But this is definitely becoming a world of a true cross-platform and true cross-promo. And this is for me also a crazy one because I'm definitely much more a PC and console type of player. But 62% of gamers play on more than one platform, and they expect a certain experiences. I think maybe some players that are more used to a distinction expect, okay, this is a different experience, but the younger ones, they don't care. They cater me the experience that I can tap into anywhere, where I want, and how I want. And when you think about it, what's blocking the entrance for mobile studios to the PC and console space? Well, I think the mobile studios, which probably most of you are familiar with, are very performance heavy. For a good reason, right? We think a lot about the performance. And when we think historically about platforms like Steam and so on, there were basically black holes that you can send the traffic in. Let's hope it's gonna work out. So lack of advertising inventory, connectivity to external networks. Second thing that was stopping us for a long time is a lack of cross-platform attribution, right? I mean, how you can compare the UA Facebook campaign on mobile to actually, I don't know, doing a promotion that runs to Xbox, right? Completely different stacks, completely different attribution infrastructure. And then lastly, siloed reporting and analytics. So basically getting the full picture and making the decision if should I invest more in this specific platform or the other. It was like comparing apples and oranges, and still will be in many cases. I'm not saying we're gonna change it to the one standardized data, but What we think will happen in the next 1 to 2 years is basically this. So imagine there's a boss of a gaming studio, and he says, well, we decided to launch our game on Steam next month. I already heard this today about 2 of the studios that are doing exactly this, who are mobile first, but they said, we're gonna try it on Steam because it's cheaper. And then probably turn it into the actually mobile game. So as the CMO, and this big shout out to Adam if he's watching that, is like, okay, nice try, not gonna happen, good luck with that. Then basically, because that again, competition in the market, we are in a mature space, I'm serious, we're gonna do it. So we have already the product in. And then as any marketer would ask, okay, but what about ad inventory and measurement, how we are gonna be judged on this, is basically, that's a you problem, figure this out. What will happen here is that, well, if we actually face with such a problem, what we can do? How to solve a me problem if we need to actually start measuring? Basically, break it down into smaller problems. The objectives that we would have when we actually moving into, let's say, Steam platform, as this example, would be, first of all, how to measure installs, right? So that can be actually good enough for the first step. We'll break down how we can measure the installs that are coming in from Steam, and that's already getting us certain number of information that we can then optimize on. Second is lifetime value. So basically how those users, this whole install group, is the one that has a higher lifetime value, right? So how we can distinguish of the high value users and the low value users. Lastly, which is the North Star that we're looking at, is how much should I spend to actually get a positive ROAS out of it? So basically return on ad spend. So to that I will actually earn more than it would cost me. Those objectives, basically how we will try to tackle it together with you as a studios and our clients and our partners, is that we are, this is not official, so I hope there's no press, but basically in 8 days we are finally launching the full console and PC measurement platform with 16 platforms in it, including Steam, Epic Games, Microsoft, Xbox, PlayStation coming in soon as well, and all the connected TVs like Roku, Fire TV, obviously iOS, Android, and Apple TV. What will be available in that is the wide range of the aggregate and raw data reports that you can basically use and then optimize the campaigns that are running it to the specific platforms. So beyond Apple and Android, beloved by the mobile gamers or Huawei store, the third-party stores, you'll have a chance to actually see the campaign measurement that goes beyond the installs. So then we can tackle the lifetime value part. And then this will be exactly sent also into the dashboards, to the raw data that you can consume into your BI. And we'll get it for the top gaming platform. And lastly, I think proving the ROAS, so making any marketing team and growth team life easier by reaching potential players wherever they are and actually fully embracing the fact that we moved into this holistic, omni-channel view. So actually my 7-year-old cousin will be happy about actually seeing similar experience across all different platforms that he wants to play with. So having the connected TV, web, mobile, out-of-home type of marketing with the multi-platform engagement, and then also a PC and console conversions, installs, in-game events, moving into the different stores like Microsoft stores. So basically the partnership will start 23rd of May. If you want to know more about it, do get in touch with us. Okay, so quickly summarizing when it comes to the performance, embrace the changes. Again, I know we've been beating this drum for a while now, but it's still there are people who are actually not paying too much attention to that. I think it's becoming extremely tough to continue with the ways how it used to be because things change. So ad networks, as you mentioned, testing the new privacy-centric sources, definitely something to consider. Other key takeaway when I was thinking about this presentation is that I think for the growth team, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to call it, we were addicted to user-level data. It's not possible anymore. It won't be. Android Privacy Sandbox is around the corner. The users are being more conscious about it. And I think that another skill that needs to be added to the growth team is data modeling. I know many of you are already doing that, already working on the predictions, already working on the predicted revenue, ROAS, whatsoever. But this is not going away. We are living in a world of aggregation when it comes to that. And I think this is extremely helpful because for many good reasons, those things are not happening on the user level data. And we need to get the big picture. We need the marketing mix models. We need to kind of get into this new world where user privacy is extremely relevant, but they also want to get the great experiences. And the great experiences coming from the holistic strategy across the different channels. And I get the fact that basically it is historically, it was a very different type of player. It was a very different type of game. AAA titles compared to the hyper-casual games, two completely different experiences. However, what we see in the market is that those gamers, those players, do tend to use more than one platform, as you saw that, 62% of those. And the experiences, game experiences created by different players on the market. I mean, just thinking about, Sega and Rovio acquisition, very console-heavy Nintendo-heavy type of games, moving into the mobile gaming with the Angry Birds. I mean, those are facts. Those are like a huge amount of money paid for those those type of acquisitions. And I think it's extremely important to measure the impact of such actions. So I'm on time. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Time for questions. Raise your hand if you want to ask a question or if you want to see one of the slides again because you didn't succeed in making a picture. Do we have some questions or comments? Agrees on or disagrees?
Lunch. Everyone's like, lunch.
Okay, please to the mic because we are recording this, so.
Yeah, first of all, really thank you for such a strong analytics. That's really helpful. And one question, where can I get this great deck?
We're happy to make it available. Question to Digital Dragons, are we going to be sent out or shown something? If not, we'll send it to you.
I think that we will only publish the video recordings, so you should leave your business card or whatsoever contact to Mateusz if you want to have more of it. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, I think that the lunch break is really pressuring. Yeah. Mateusz, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Today we've heard a bit about the cross-platform in the early morning sessions. We heard about the many problems that mobile has. I don't know why, but I felt the ending of your presentation was quite peaceful for me, so it's nice change over in this room. You've been participating in the mobile sponsored by 10 Square Games hall at Digital Dragons. We have 6 of those around the corner. I hope you will enjoy both days. I'm obliged to remind you that our main partner is Małopolska region, main sponsor is Techland, CD Projekt Red, Creepy Jar, Flying Wild Hawk, Intel, Infinity Ward, Product Madness, and Tiny Build are our gold sponsors, and AMD is our technology partner. Thank you very much, and once again, put your hands together for Mateusz for the great presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.